Have you ever seen a child's spirit crushed in an instant? My name is Liam. For years, I had perfected the art of appeasement, of shrinking, of navigating the familiar storms of my family, hoping to remain unseen, unheard. But some storms, they don't just brew on the horizon. They sweep in, uninvited, and when they threaten the one person you would die for, that's when the quiet breaks. That's when everything changes. After Sarah, my wife, died 2 years ago, it was just Maya and me. We built our own universe, a quiet sanctuary filled with art supplies, silly stories, and the kind of laughter that only true safety can bring. Maya, she was all color, all light, and her art, that was her soul, spilled onto paper. Unfiltered, honest. I was a graphic designer, working freelance, often burning the midnight oil. But as long as I had a gig and Maya had her crayons, we were okay. Sometimes clients were slow to pay, sometimes the bills piled, but my little sparkle snout kept my world bright. Then came the annual Vance family retreat. Not a vacation, an obligation. Every summer, a pilgrimage to the Vance family's sprawling lakeside cabin in northern Michigan. A monument not to comfort, but to success. To the carefully curated image my parents, Eleanor and Arthur, held so dear. I'd managed to avoid it for the past 2 years, clinging to my grief as an excuse. But this summer, Eleanor had been relentless. "Liam, darling," she'd cooed over the phone. "It's time Maya bonded with her cousins. And Robert would simply adore seeing you." The dreaded words. I always felt a familiar wave of dread wash over me the moment my tires hit the gravel driveway. Seeing my sleek, successful brother Robert's expensive SUV already parked. Maya, though, she was pure, unadulterated excitement. "Wow, Daddy, it's even bigger than the pictures," she'd exclaimed, practically tumbling out of the car, clutching her beloved sketchbook. "Can we go swimming first? Oh, can I show everyone my sparkle snout?" She's nearly finished. I'd forced a strained smile, trying to match her enthusiasm, but my shoulders had already tensed, sensing the familiar chill in the air, despite the summer heat. Inside, the cabin felt more like a museum than a home. Vast, elegant, filled with expensive, heavy furniture. Robert, sharp-suited even on vacation, was already holding court with a distant cousin, his laugh a little too loud, a little too forced. Eleanor, pristine in tailored linen, greeted me with an air kiss that barely brushed my cheek, her eyes immediately scanning me, dissecting my casual attire. "Liam, darling, so glad you finally decided to grace us with your presence. And little Maya, look how big you've gotten." Her smile was a brittle practice thing. Her gaze then flicked over my comfortable, slightly worn summer clothes. You know, Robert was just telling us about his latest architectural triumph. Another massive corporate campus in downtown Portland. So impressive. Must be nice to have such stability. The word hung in the air, a familiar, subtle jab. Stability. Always a veiled criticism of my freelance graphic design work. A reminder of my perceived precariousness. "My work is fulfilling, Mom," I'd replied, trying to keep my voice even. "And I'm doing fine. More than fine, actually." Before I could elaborate, Robert had cut in, a condescending smirk playing on his lips. "Fulfilling, yes, but are you building anything, Liam? Besides abstract art on a screen? Anyway, glad you made it. Wouldn't want Maya growing up thinking we Vances aren't unified. Family image, you know." My jaw had tightened. I'd glanced at Maya, who had already retreated to a quiet corner, lost in the vibrant world of her sketchbook, mercifully oblivious to the subtle digs. If you're enjoying the story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It won't cost you anything, but it will mean the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video. My Aunt Carol, my mother's sister, had offered a small, sympathetic smile from across the cavernous room. She was a quiet presence, often overlooked, but I'd caught her knowing gaze, a fleeting moment of understanding. Then Arthur, my father, stern and imposing, had strode over, his voice a low rumble. "Maya, still drawing those fanciful things? Perhaps your father could encourage something more concrete. Practical, like learning to balance a checkbook, or the principles of structural engineering." The background hum of the music had grown almost imperceptibly louder then, a foreboding undercurrent. It was the usual drill. Robert, the golden son, showered with praise. The perfect heir. Me, the struggling artist, the wild card, politely dismissed, my life choices always under subtle interrogation. And Maya, my brilliant, imaginative daughter, was just a minor inconvenience. A messy, unpredictable detail in their perfectly sculpted family portrait. The air in that house was thick with unspoken judgment, a heavy blanket of expectations. The long, polished dining table groaned under the weight of an elaborate dinner. Conversations, mostly dominated by Robert expounding on his new high-rise project, were loud, a cacophony of self-importance. Maya, visibly bored with the droning adult voices, fidgeted in her seat. She discreetly pulled out her beloved sketchbook, her eyes alight with an internal excitement. She'd been working on something truly special all day. Her sparkle snout, the most magnificent, vivid, fantastical creature she had ever conceived, bursting with vibrant colors and swirling patterns, ready to breathe glitter and make wishes come true. It was almost finished. Liam watched her, a small, soft smile playing on his lips, finding solace in her quiet joy amidst the family's clamor. He had no idea the fragile piece was about to shatter. Maya, unable to contain her excitement, finally held up the drawing. "Look, Uncle Robert. It's a sparkle snout. She's magic." Robert paused mid-sentence, his brow furrowed, clearly annoyed by the interruption to his grand monologue. He glanced at the drawing with disdain. "Maya, darling, we're having an important discussion here. That's ugly and distracting." Without a moment's hesitation, without even a flicker of kindness, he snatched the drawing from her small hand. A sickening, ripping sound sliced through the polite hum of conversation as he tore the vivid artwork. Not once, but twice, right down the middle. "Childish nonsense," he sneered, dropping the ruined pieces onto the pristine tablecloth. "You need to learn when to be seen and not heard." A chilling, brittle laugh erupted from Eleanor. "Oh, Robert," she tittered. "Always so direct. Someone has to be, I suppose." Arthur, my father, merely sighed, a dismissive, world-weary sound. "She needs to learn her place," he muttered, as if this were a lesson well-deserved. The world seemed to tilt. Maya's eyes, moments ago sparkling with creation, filled with tears that overflowed in an instant. Her small face crumpled, a soundless sob escaping her lips. The torn pieces of her sparkle snout lay on the table, mimicking the shards of her own heart. She burst into silent, heartbroken tears, her tiny body trembling. Liam felt a primal shock, a cold wave washing over him. Stunned. He was utterly, completely stunned. His mind screamed, a torrent of fury, but his voice was caught in his throat. Years of conditioned politeness, of being the family peacekeeper, of fading into the background, locked him in place. He stared, wide-eyed, at the crumpled form of his daughter, at the casual cruelty of his brother, at the indifferent laughter of his parents. His fists clenched under the table, but he couldn't move. Not yet. He could only watch as Maya's small, vibrant world imploded, the echoes of their judgment already beginning to take root in her tender spirit. His internal rage, though, was a simmering volcano, waiting for the crack to erupt. What I didn't know, what no one knew, was that hidden amidst the decorative plants on the sideboard, a tiny camera lens subtly peeked out. Aunt Carol's son, a budding filmmaker, had set it up to capture family memories. And in just moments, it would capture far more than memories. It would capture the shattering of a child's spirit. Then came the silence. It was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It wasn't just the tearing of paper, it was the rending of something pure, something sacred. I remember the red flush on Robert's face, the smug satisfaction in his eyes as he looked around, almost expecting applause. Eleanor's brittle laugh had followed, like shattered glass, and Arthur's sigh, "She needs to learn her place," felt like a hammer blow. Maya, my vibrant, confident Maya, she just crumpled. Her little body shook with silent sobs, her coloring book, now a broken butterfly, fluttering to the polished floor. I scooped her up, her tiny frame trembling against me. My throat was tight, choked with a rage I hadn't felt in years, a primal, animalistic fury. But the years of conditioning, of being the peacekeeper, the sensitive one, held me back. I was stunned, paralyzed. I just held her, murmuring reassurances as I carried her out of that suffocating dining room, past the stunned, hushed faces of my family. They watched us go, already, I suspected, constructing their comfortable narratives to dismiss what they'd just witnessed. In our small, lakeside cabin room, I held a cool cloth to her face, trying to soothe her, trying to make sense of a world where an uncle could so casually break a child's joy. She kept whimpering, small, hiccuping sounds that tore at my very core. Then she looked up at me, her blue eyes wide, shimmering with unshed tears. "My heart hurts, Daddy," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Why did Uncle Robert tear my drawing? Was my drawing bad? Am I bad? That question. Am I bad? It shattered me. It was the echo of every insecurity, every belittling remark I had ever absorbed from my own childhood within this family. Maya, my daughter, asking if she was inherently flawed because an adult couldn't control their rage. No, not again. This cycle, this insidious poison, had to end. Maya became withdrawn. The sparkle in her eyes dimmed. Her sketchbook, once her constant companion, lay untouched on her nightstand. She stopped drawing. She stopped humming her cheerful tunes. That night, the nightmares came. I'd wake to her soft cries, then to her terrified screams. "Uncle Robert is chasing me, Daddy. He wants to tear my drawings again." I'd hold her close, rocking her, whispering promises of safety. Promises I now realized I couldn't keep while we were under this roof, under this shadow. Every whimpering sob, every fearful glance, every time she flinched at a loud noise, chiseled away at my remaining reluctance. It was the next morning. I was trying to convince Maya to eat breakfast, anything, when there was a soft knock on our door. It was Aunt Carol. Her face, usually serene, was lined with worry. "Liam," she whispered, glancing nervously down the hall. "My son, he was filming. For a project. He caught everything." My heart leaped. The hidden camera. I'd seen it, casually tucked away. I'd dismissed it as harmless. Aunt Carol pressed a small USB drive into my hand. The entire dinner. Robert, Eleanor, Arthur, their reactions. It's all there. Raw. Unedited. "My son, he's horrified. He wanted you to have this before they realize." Her eyes, usually so meek, held a quiet fire. What Robert did, it was unforgivable. And their reaction, it was worse. I simply nodded, my hand closing tightly around the small drive. As soon as Maya drifted back to sleep in the night, exhausted from her nightmares, I plugged the USB into my laptop. The grainy footage played, a chilling replay of the previous night. Robert's arrogant face, his hand snatching the drawing, the sickening rip, the casual disdain in his voice. Childish nonsense. Eleanor's tittering laugh. Arthur's dismissive sigh. And then Maya's little body, recoiling, her tear-streaked face. I saw myself too, stunned, slow to react, my conditioned politeness freezing me. The rage that had been simmering finally boiled over. It was undeniable. Blatant. Cruel. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a deliberate act of malice, endorsed by my parents. My first call was to Mark, my best friend from college. He answered on the second ring, his usual cheerful demeanor giving way to shock as I recounted the incident, then to cold fury as I played him the audio from the video. "Liam," he said, his voice tight. "This is unbelievable. You have to do something. For Maya. For you." Mark, always the practical one, urged me to act. "You have proof, man. Real proof." I knew he was right, but the ingrained family loyalty, the decades of conditioning to appease, to avoid conflict, weighed heavily. What would happen if I actually pushed back? Would they cut me off completely? Financially? Socially? They held so much sway. I pictured Arthur's steely gaze, Eleanor's manipulative charm. They'd paint me as unstable, a vengeful widower. The next morning, I confronted them. I found Robert, Eleanor, and Arthur in the living room, sipping coffee, already in damage control mode, the perfect picture of a unified family. "We need to talk about what happened last night," I began, my voice steadier than I expected. Robert just waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, for God's sake, Liam. It was just a drawing. You're making a mountain out of a molehill, just like Sarah always did. Always so dramatic." My blood ran cold at the mention of Sarah, a deliberate jab, twisting her memory. Eleanor fluttered her hands. "Liam, darling, you're being overly sensitive. It was just a little moment, hardly worth this drama. You're trying to create problems where there aren't any, perhaps to deflect from your own career choices." Arthur leaned forward, his voice low, menacing. "If you make a big deal out of this, Liam, don't expect any more help with your expenses. We've been quite generous, after all. Consider it a privilege, not a right." The unspoken threat hung heavy. my occasional need for a car repair, a medical bill, something for Maya's school. Their help was always a leash. Their refusal to acknowledge the harm, their immediate dismissal, their twisting of the narrative, it was infuriating. Their complete lack of remorse was a stark, brutal revelation. In that moment, watching their cold, unfeeling faces, something inside me clicked. The timid Liam, the appeaser, finally broke. My resolve hardened, like steel forging in a furnace. This wasn't about me anymore. This wasn't about pleasing them. This was about Maya, my daughter, my heart. My absolute duty was to protect her, no matter the cost, no matter the enemy. And no one, absolutely no one, hurts my daughter. Not anymore. The drive back to our quiet suburban town in Oregon was different. The usual weariness was still there, a constant companion since Sarah's passing, but now it was laced with a new kind of energy, a cold, focused resolve. Maya was slumped in her booster seat, eerily quiet. Her sketchbook, once overflowing with vibrant imagination, remained closed. It was a cut, not just for her, but for me. That question, am I bad, echoed in my mind, a relentless drumbeat pushing me forward. There would be no more shrinking, no more appeasement. My first call, even before we unpacked, was to set up an emergency appointment with a child therapist. Dr. Lena Sharma came highly recommended, a specialist in childhood trauma. When we sat in her calm, sunlit office, Maya clung to me, hesitant, her usual effervescence replaced by a fragile stillness. Dr. Sharma's gentle questions gradually drew out the raw fear. Maya whispered about Robert, about the tearing, about the feeling of being scared and wrong. Dr. Sharma listened, her gaze compassionate, her notes meticulous. Later, in a private conversation, she confirmed my worst fears. Liam, she explained softly, Maya is showing classic signs of acute stress response. Anxiety around male authority figures, sleep disturbances, and a marked reluctance to engage in activities she once loved, particularly drawing. What happened was significant trauma, not minor discipline. Her sense of safety was shattered. She promised a detailed professional assessment, a piece of paper that would become far more than just a diagnosis. It would become evidence. Back home, with Maya finally asleep, a fragile peace settling over her face, I sat at my computer. Aunt Carol had sent the raw video file. I called Mark, my friend, my confidant. I have it, I told him, my voice flat, devoid of emotion, just pure focus. The whole thing, uncut. Mark came over immediately, his expression grim as he watched the footage. Liam, he said, shaking his head. This is gold. Damning. Together, for hours, we meticulously worked. I wasn't interested in manipulating anything, only in clarity. We trimmed the video, isolating the crucial moments. Robert's sneering face, the sickening rip of Maya's drawing, his callous declaration of childish nonsense. Then Eleanor's cold, brittle laughter, and Arthur's dismissive, chilling sigh. She needs to learn her place. I blurred Maya's face, protecting her identity, but ensuring Robert's actions were undeniably clear. Every cut, every frame, was precise. A surgical strike. Next came the targets. Robert's carefully constructed empire. His prestigious firm, Apex Architecture. His gleaming reputation as a successful architect. His carefully cultivated image as a philanthropist, serving on the board of the prominent Children's Art Foundation, a charity that championed young artists. The hypocrisy made my stomach churn. And then, the local news station, an investigative journalism unit that had recently covered the very art foundation Robert supposedly supported. I drafted 3 separate emails, each one a masterclass in professional restraint. No emotion, just facts. To the Ethics Committee and Human Resources Department of Apex Architecture, to the Board of Directors of the Children's Art Foundation, to the investigative desk at KVL News. I attached the meticulously edited video clip and Dr. Sharma's anonymized professional assessment documenting Maya's trauma. I stated, simply, that as a concerned parent and citizen, I felt ethically obligated to share this information, given Mr. Robert Vance's positions of influence, particularly those involving children and the community. I requested strict confidentiality regarding my identity as the source, citing concerns for my daughter's privacy and safety. My finger hovered over the send button. There was no going back. This was it. I clicked. The fallout was immediate. Within hours, my phone became a vibrating testament to their escalating panic. Robert's texts flashed across my screen like angry red warnings. "What have you done, Liam? My firm just called an emergency meeting. They're asking questions. You need to tell them this is a misunderstanding. Now." His threats escalated from dismissive to outright menacing. "You'll regret this. I'll make sure you regret this." My parents joined the barrage. Eleanor's messages, initially tinged with false concern, quickly devolved into furious accusations. "You've betrayed this family. For attention. For spite. You're destroying everything Arthur and I built." Arthur's own texts were colder, more cutting. "You've always been jealous of Robert. This is a pathetic attempt to tear down his success. Don't ever expect a penny from us again." I blocked them all. Then, a new notification. An anonymous email. The subject line was simply, "Apex." My heart hammered as I opened it. It was from someone clearly within Robert's firm. Their message brief, but chilling. "What you sent, it's known. And it's not the first time. Robert has a history of aggressive outbursts in the office. Shouting, throwing things, mostly directed at subordinates. It's always been swept under the rug because of his talent and his connections. His power. Just thought you should know. You're not alone." A new piece of the puzzle. This wasn't an isolated incident, a mere temper tantrum. This was a pattern. And finally, someone else was acknowledging it. This tip, this anonymous confirmation, strengthened my resolve tenfold. The public exposure hit harder, faster, than I'd anticipated. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was Mark, his voice buzzing with urgency. "Liam, turn on KVL. Now." I flicked on the news channel. There it was. The segment chillingly titled, "Unseen Cruelty, When Family Bonds Break." The anchor's grave voice described the incident, the ethical implications, the questions surrounding public figures involved with children's charities. Then, the video played. My meticulously edited clip. Robert's face, clear as day, tearing Maya's drawing, his cruel words. Eleanor's laugh. Arthur's dismissal. Maya's blurred, sobbing form. The anchor discussed the importance of protecting children, the questions of accountability for those in positions of trust. The electronic hum in the background of the video swelled, a triumphant, almost mournful, choir of justice beginning to rise. The cracks in their facade were finally showing. And this was just the beginning. The world, it turns out, moves much faster when the truth is exposed. The anonymous email had been just the beginning. Within days of the news segment airing, the consequences for Robert began to cascade. A domino effect that sent tremors through the pristine facade of Apex Architecture. His firm, facing public scrutiny and ethical questions, launched an internal investigation with frightening speed. I received an official notification. Robert Vance had been placed on administrative leave, pending review. A week later, another update, demoted. Stripped of his high-profile client-facing role, shunted into a back-office position with a significant cut to his compensation. The Children's Art Foundation, quick to protect its image and mission, severed all ties with him, citing their zero-tolerance policy regarding child welfare. The philanthropist was out. My phone, once a silent sentinel, became a beacon of frantic calls and texts from my parents. Their messages swung wildly between outrage and desperate pleas. "Liam, what have you done? You're ruining your brother's life." Eleanor would wail, her words dripping with theatrical tears. Arthur's messages were colder, steelier. "You think you've won? You've only ensured your own isolation. The family will not forget this betrayal." I didn't respond. Their attempts to shame me, to guilt-trip me back into silence, held no power now. The only voice I heard was Maya's, whispering, "Am I bad?" But as my immediate family raged, a different kind of connection began to emerge. Aunt Carol, emboldened by the public exposure, became my unlikely champion. She started speaking out, quietly at first, then more openly, to other relatives. "I saw it," she'd tell them, her voice calm but firm. "Liam is not exaggerating. Robert was cruel, and Eleanor and Arthur condoned it." Her courage was a crack in the dam, and suddenly, the trickle became a stream. Other estranged relatives, people I hadn't spoken to in years, started reaching out. Whispers turned into confessions. My cousin, David, revealed that Robert had once violently twisted his son's arm during a tense board game at a family Christmas years ago. dismissed by Eleanor as boys being boys. My uncle, Richard, confided that he'd witnessed Robert shove a business associate during a friendly golf game, laughed off by Arthur as just how men handle disagreements. A pattern, clearer now than ever, of unchecked aggression and a family that consistently swept it under the rug. It wasn't just Maya. It had been happening for years. This wasn't merely about one drawing. It was about breaking a cycle. The news segment had been a hammer blow to Robert's carefully constructed professional life. But his personal life was crumbling too. Stripped of his perceived power, his composure frayed. The rage that had always simmered beneath his polished exterior now boiled over at home. I learned this when my phone rang, an unfamiliar number. It was Natalie, Robert's wife. Her voice was strained, on the verge of breaking. "Liam," she pleaded, "can we meet? Somewhere private. Please." We met at a quiet cafe far from our respective neighborhoods. Natalie looked hollow, exhausted, dark circles under eyes that usually sparkled. "I heard the news," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "And Robert's been unhinged. He threw a vase at the wall last night. He said it was my fault, that I hadn't defended him to my own family." She paused, her gaze distant. "He's been like this for years, Liam. Not physical with me, but the shouting, the insults, the way he breaks things when he's angry. I've normalized it. I convinced myself it was just stress." She looked at me then, her eyes welling with tears. "But after seeing what he did to Maya, and how your parents reacted, I suddenly understood. It's a sickness, and I can't live like this anymore." My heart ached for her. She had been living in her own kind of cage. Then, the final, devastating piece of the puzzle. "There's more," Natalie confided, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "Robert, he's been struggling. He has a serious gambling problem. It's why he's always so desperate for money, always pushing for bigger projects. Some of those successful projects he brags about, they're built on cutting corners, on intimidating subcontractors, on unethical practices. He's always one better way from losing everything." She pulled out her phone, showing me screenshots of hushed emails, panicked texts, images of betting slips. "He's been using client funds to cover his debts, Liam. Small amounts at first, but it's escalating. He's not just arrogant, he's a liability." The truth of Robert's success was even uglier than I'd imagined. It wasn't just ego, it was desperation. This new evidence, this clear indication of his professional misconduct beyond the ethical, could obliterate him. The ultimate reckoning came a week later. My paternal grandmother, Martha, the matriarch of the Vance family, a woman of formidable will and quiet wisdom, now in her late 80s, summoned everyone. She had seen the news segment. She had listened to the audio, a copy discreetly sent to her by Aunt Carol. "This has gone on long enough," she declared over the phone, her voice surprisingly firm for her age. "There will be a meeting. Sunday, 2 o'clock. Everyone, and I mean everyone." The tension in her stately Victorian living room was a living, breathing thing. My parents sat stiffly on an antique sofa, Eleanor's face a mask of furious composure, Arthur's jaw set like stone. Robert, looking disheveled and drawn, leaned against the fireplace, eyes bloodshot, a whiskey glass clutched in his hand, though it was barely afternoon. Natalie sat alone in an armchair by the window, her gaze fixed on the rain-streaked glass. Aunts, uncles, cousins, the usual chatter conspicuously absent. Then Martha entered, leaning on her cane, but radiating an authority that silenced the room instantly. "I have lived long enough," she began, her voice clear and resonant, "to see 5 generations of this family, and I have never been more disappointed than I am today." Arthur, ever the control freak, bristled. "Mother, if you would just listen to our side." "Howard Arthur," she cut him off sharply, using his formal name. "I may be old, but I am not senile. Carol was good enough to share his recording with me. I heard exactly what happened." The room fell silent, the air thick with unspoken dread. "Robert," she continued, her gaze fixed on my brother unwavering, "you tore a child's drawing. A 7-year-old, for the crime of drawing. For drawing. Then you insulted both her and her mother. Your behavior was inexcusable." Robert flushed, opening his mouth to protest. "It wasn't that serious. Everyone's overreacting." Martha's eyes flashed. "Be quiet. When a grown man years a child's dream, it is always serious. It is the breach of trust. The abuse of power. And Eleanor, Arthur. Her gaze shifted to my parents. You two encouraged it. Laughed at it. Dismissed it. Eleanor's brittle composure finally cracked. Martha, you don't understand. Liam has always been difficult. Always exaggerating. Eleanor. My grandmother interrupted again, her voice gaining an unexpected strength. I raised your husband. I know exactly where Robert learned this behavior. Her gaze, sharp and piercing, landed on my father, whose face had gone pale. Arthur was disciplined harshly by his father. Too harshly. I regret every single day that I didn't stop it then. I won't make that mistake again. A heavy, suffocating silence descended, weighted with generations of unspoken pain. Arthur stared at his hands, unable to meet her gaze. Liam, my grandmother continued, turning to me, her eyes softening slightly. You did what I should have done decades ago. You protected your child, even at great personal cost. For that, you have my respect. I was stunned. I hadn't expected this public validation, this unexpected alliance. That said, she continued, this family now stands at a crossroads. Healing is possible, but only with accountability. Robert, desperate to regain control, pushed away from the mantelpiece. Accountability? I've been publicly humiliated, demoted at work, kicked off the charity board I helped build. Isn't that enough punishment? My voice, surprisingly steady, finally found its power. This isn't about punishment, Robert. It's about acknowledging what you did. Maya has nightmares. She stopped drawing, the thing that brought her the most joy. She asked me if she was bad. My voice broke slightly, the raw emotion piercing through my controlled facade. Robert started to say, I didn't mean, but I cut him off. That's just it, Robert. You didn't mean to traumatize her. You just meant to control her, to make her small and quiet. The way this family has always tried to control and diminish me. But intentions don't erase impact. Arthur, unable to bear the public dissection, stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. We've indulged this drama long enough. Robert made a mistake, yes, but Liam deliberately destroyed his reputation out of spite. No, Arthur, my grandmother said firmly, her voice ringing with authority. Liam showed people who Robert really is. He destroyed his own reputation through his actions. And you both enabled him. I can't believe you're taking his side, Eleanor exclaimed, her voice shrill. I am taking the side of that child, grandmother replied, her gaze sweeping across the room. As should you all. The confrontation escalated. Years of resentment, of suppressed truths, finally poured out. Aunt Carol described witnessing Arthur's own harsh discipline of me as a child, while Robert received only gentle guidance. Cousin David revealed Robert had once twisted her son's arm. Even Uncle Richard admitted he'd seen Robert shove a business associate, a detail that now resonated with Natalie's revelations. With each confession, Robert's face grew darker, while my parents' denials became less convincing. Then Natalie spoke. Her voice was quiet, but unwavering. I'm filing for separation. The room fell silent, the collective breath held. Robert turned to her, genuinely shocked. What? This incident, Natalie continued, her gaze fixed on Robert, forced me to acknowledge things I've been ignoring for years. The way you speak to me when you're angry, the things you throw, the fear I feel when I hear your car in the driveway after you've been drinking. I've normalized it. She paused, her voice catching. You've never hit me, Robert, no. But hearing how you spoke to Maya and Liam, seeing how your parents minimized it, I suddenly understood where our relationship was truly heading. I can't wait until it escalates further. The meeting continued for nearly 3 hours. By the end, several truths had become brutally clear. This family would never be the same. Lines had been drawn, not by blood, but by values. Robert had lost far more than a professional title. He had lost the unwavering support system that had protected him his entire life. My parents faced a stark choice: acknowledge their role in enabling this toxic behavior, or lose relationships with multiple family members, including their only granddaughter. As the gathering broke up, my grandmother took my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. It will take time, she said softly. Change doesn't happen overnight, especially in families with such entrenched patterns. But it started, and that's something. Thank you. The family summit at my grandmother's house had been a crucible. It had stripped away the polished veneer, exposing the rot beneath. But out of that chaos, something truly profound began to emerge. not just for Maya and me, but for others. Justice, it turned out, wasn't a single, thunderous event, but a series of quiet, inexorable consequences. Robert's professional life became a wasteland. The detailed report from Apex Architecture's internal investigation, undoubtedly bolstered by Natalie's courageous revelations about his gambling debts and unethical practices, resulted in his permanent demotion. His name became synonymous with scandal in the industry. The prestigious projects he once boasted about were stripped from him, replaced by menial back-office tasks. He was forced into intensive anger management therapy, a condition of continued, albeit humiliating, employment. His golden child status had truly tarnished. Natalie, true to her word, filed for separation. I met her for coffee a few weeks later, and she looked lighter, freer, despite the pain. She confided in me that she had miscarried twice during their marriage, and now, finally seeing the truth of Robert's volatile temper, she wondered if the constant stress of walking on eggshells around him had contributed. Her voice was tinged with sorrow, but also with a fierce, new determination. She was reclaiming her peace. My parents, Eleanor and Arthur, faced a different kind of reckoning. Their once unquestioning social circle began to shrink. The whispers, fueled by the news segment and the fractured family's own quiet confessions, turned into uncomfortable silences and cancelled invitations. Their primary source of pride and status, Robert's flawless success, had been obliterated. They made halting, awkward attempts at reconciliation, clearly motivated more by damage control than genuine remorse. Eleanor called, inviting us to dinner as if nothing had happened. Arthur sent a stiff email characterizing the entire incident as a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. I maintained firm boundaries. Any relationship moving forward, I told them, my voice calm but unwavering, requires a full acknowledgement of the harm done to Maya, and concrete steps to ensure her safety and emotional well-being in your presence. They haven't met those conditions yet, but the power dynamic has shifted. They no longer held the financial leverage they once used to control me. My graphic design business was flourishing, attracting clients who valued my directness and integrity. I was finally truly free. The most profound transformations, however, were happening within Maya and within me. Dr. Lena Sharma, her child therapist, became a beacon of hope. Children are remarkably resilient, Liam, she shared during one of our progress updates, especially when they have a secure attachment to a protective caregiver. You've done everything right. My familiar guilt resurfaced. I didn't protect her from the initial trauma, I'd confessed. Dr. Sharma countered gently, but you responded perfectly afterward. You validated her feelings, removed her from danger, got her appropriate support, and held the perpetrator accountable. That's why she's healing. That's true protection. And Maya? She blossomed. The nightmares decreased, then faded. She still grew a little anxious around loud, unfamiliar male voices, but the fear no longer gripped her. Most encouragingly, she started drawing again. Not just small, tentative sketches, but bold, vibrant pieces, creating a whole new series of strong creatures. Guardians with enormous, kind eyes and powerful wings, figures that protected the vulnerable. She even joined an after-school art club, her confidence blooming with every stroke of her brush. My once timid little girl, silenced by a careless act, was finding her voice again. My own life, too, had changed in unexpected ways. The timid man who once walked on eggshells around his family had found a strength he never knew he possessed. That quiet voice, once perpetually suppressed, now spoke with authority and conviction. My graphic design business thrived. I started taking on projects that genuinely resonated with my values, no longer chasing every dollar out of desperation. I found a surprising confidence in client meetings, a directness I hadn't known I had. It seems standing up for my daughter had taught me how to stand up for myself in every arena of my life. 7 months after Robert slapped Maya, I hosted a small gathering at our apartment. Maya called it our chosen family celebration. It wasn't grand, but it was filled with warmth and genuine connection. Mark was there, of course, my rock. Aunt Carol arrived, her quiet smile more radiant than I'd ever seen it, a symbol of newfound family integrity. Natalie came with her sister, now a true friend, her laughter lighter and more frequent. A few new friends from a parent support group I'd joined were there too. a community forged in shared experiences of trauma and healing. And to my astonishment, my grandmother, Martha, arrived, not with Eleanor or Arthur, but with a hesitant-looking cousin who had only recently found the courage to connect with me. My mother, Eleanor, had called Martha, making her first independent overture since the incident, asking if she could come. Martha, in her wisdom, had come instead, representing the true essence of family. She carried a letter, penned in her elegant script, expressing her pride in me and Maya. As everyone mingled in our modest living room, a symphony of genuine laughter and easy conversation, Maya tugged at my sleeve. "Daddy," she whispered, her eyes shining. "Can I sing our song to them now?" My breath caught. I knew what this meant. This was her true test, her ultimate reclamation. "Are you sure you want to, sweetie?" I asked, my voice thick with emotion. She nodded, her small chin set with determination. "I've been practicing with Miss Clara at Art Club. It's for my sparkle snout." I called for everyone's attention. The room fell silent, bathed in the soft glow of our apartment lights. Maya took her position by the window, a small, courageous figure. She began to sing. Not the simple cartoon-themed song that had triggered Robert's violence, but a simple children's ballad about courage, about finding your voice, about light overcoming shadows. Her clear, sweet voice filled our home, without apology, without fear. Watching her, standing tall, eyes bright with confidence, tears pricked my own eyes. This was the true measure of our healing. Not just surviving trauma, but reclaiming joy, louder and truer than before. When she finished, the room erupted in applause, tears in many eyes. Even Eleanor, who had made a hesitant appearance with Aunt Carol's son, dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. She has a beautiful voice as well as great talent as an artist. "Wow," she said quietly to Aunt Carol. I should have said something that day. That evening, after our guests had departed and Maya was tucked into bed, dreaming in colors again, I sat on our small balcony, watching the city lights twinkle. The past 7 months had been the most challenging and the most transformative of my life. I had lost certain family connections, but I had gained authentic ones, bonds forged in truth and respect, not obligation. I had faced financial uncertainty, but found profound professional growth. Most importantly, I had shown Maya and myself that she was worth protecting at any cost. The journey wasn't over. There would be more difficult conversations, more boundaries to establish and maintain, more work to do in therapy for both of us. But for the first time in my life, I faced the future without the shadow of family toxicity darkening my path. Robert's cruel act, meant to silence a child, had inadvertently given voice to generations of suppressed truths. In trying to make Maya small, he had helped me discover just how strong I could be. As parents, we cannot always prevent our children from experiencing pain, but we can show them how to respond to it with dignity and courage. We can demonstrate that true strength lies not in dominating others, but in standing firmly in our own truth, even when we feel utterly alone. My brother tore my daughter's simple artwork. My parents laughed, and in that terrible moment, they taught me the most valuable lesson of my life: that some family ties need to be severed for healing to begin, while others can be rewoven into something stronger and more beautiful than before. Have you ever had to choose between silence and standing up for what's right, even when it means challenging your own blood? When does family loyalty become complicity? If Liam's story resonated with you, like this video, subscribe to our channel for more stories of courage, and share your own experiences in the comments below. Remember, your voice, and the voices of those you protect, deserve to be heard.